So, the first one we have is Connie Reguli.
That was pretty good. Thank you.
I had both of them saying the same thing.
Proverbs 31:8 commands us to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Connie Reguli. I am an attorney in this community and have practiced law throughout the state of Tennessee for 20 years, and I am a mom. In 2008, my teenage daughter did one of the scariest things a child can do. She met a man online and ran away. I quickly found that I could get no help from the police in locating my daughter unless I filed a runaway petition in juvenile court, and I did, the biggest mistake of my life. Over the course of the next 3 months, I would find my family bound with orders and demands from Judge Guffee, who was then the magistrate, that would ultimately damage my daughter psychologically and have a long-term effect on my family. My daughter returned home, and I focused on reintegrating her into normal life. When my daughter answered the cell phone laying on a bedside table, she was quickly told by one of Judge Guffey's employees she had violated a court order, so the police would be coming to the house to arrest her. I then received a phone call that my daughter would be restrained in zip ties and taken to jail and would not even be able to talk to her for 24 hours. Judge Guffee forced me to bring my other 2 children to court where there had been no allegations of abuse and threatened to put them in foster care. Now, let me assure you, my daughter was not a criminal. She did not use drugs. She did not steal. She did not disobey school rules. She did not fight. She did not abuse animals. She was not a criminal. And yet, under the instruction of Judge Guffee, law enforcement treated her like a criminal, causing great distress and leaving her with post-traumatic stress that still affects her today. It was only after Judge Guffee had left the case that I was able to get a full hearing and unravel what had occurred, the madness that had occurred to my family. After this was all over, I was willing to write it off as some kind of a personal conflict and said, well, maybe she doesn't like me and my life will go on. However, after Judge Guffee became the judge in 2013, I was repeatedly approached by families who told me equally horrifying stories. When I was told about the assaults taken against them in the courtroom, I said, well, this will be easy to resolve. We'll get the courtroom videos and we can see what happened. However, Judge Guffee had entered her own local rule that prohibited the clerk from releasing courtroom videos without her permission. And of course, when the parents requested them, she denied it. Instead of modifying that rule, the taxpayers of Williamson County paid for the county attorney to fight that all the way to the Court of Appeals. In all the juvenile courts I have worked in Tennessee, Williamson County Juvenile Court is the only one that has refused to produce courtroom videos. Williamson County is a community of prosperity and growth, and yet the operation of our juvenile court and our public schools is shameful. As commissioners, you control the checkbook and you can force change in these venues. You are now going to hear others tell their stories and share the destruction in their lives that occurred in this courtroom. I implore you to put this knowledge to action and make the county one that strives to support family development as much as it does economic development. And I have one slight modification in the list. If you would allow us, I had everybody come up and sign it in order. I am going to ask that after Roy Matlock, you call Miss Denise Andrews. She's on the back. If you would just kind of insert her in there, she'll just be a couple minutes. I also have some photographs that these families have brought, and if you will implore me, I'll just kind of stand up and show those photographs while they're speaking. I've asked everybody to keep their speeches short. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Natasha Polkovich.
Thank you. I'm Natasha Pavlovich. On September 12, 2016, I spoke before this committee about my experiences with Judge Sharon Guffee. In August 2017, I spoke at the House Legislature about Judge Sharon Guffee. And I'm back here today to urge you to investigate and remove her from the bench as Williamson County Juvenile Court Judge. I have firsthand experience and knowledge of Judge Guffey's abuse of power, incompetence, and corruption. I want to clarify that I'm not here to make an appeal on my case, or because, as Judge Guffee stated, that I'm, quote, dissatisfied with a ruling I received in my court, unquote. While I do not agree with her unconstitutional rulings, I am here today to inform you of her illegal behavior, her bullying tactics, and her disdain for the legal system. I was in front of Judge Guffee on matters of child custody and the establishment of a parenting plan when Judge Guffee threatened, quote, "If you don't know how to parent, I will take the child from both of you and put her in foster care," unquote. Without evidence of abuse, neglect, or wrongdoings by either parent, her threat was unnecessary and was self-serving to demonstrate her power over parents. She continued her speech by flippantly commanding, quote, "One of the parents must move out. I don't care which one, you decide. Toss a coin if you have to. And if you can't decide, call me and I'll decide," unquote. A judge that you placed on the bench to serve the people of Williamson County should have the competence to know that she had no jurisdiction on real estate matter. Judge Guffee should have had the competence to allow due process. Quote, "This matter came to be heard on the 14th day of March 2016 before the Honorable Sharon E. Guffee, Judge of Juvenile Court of Williamson County, Tennessee," unquote. Fact is, there was no hearing, and the matter was never heard. The order continues, quote, "Upon proof introduced in the entire record, the court finds that mothers should vacate family residence immediately, period," unquote. Judge Guffee knowingly falsified this order and signed it. Illegally and without any consideration of the consequences of her order, she made mother and child homeless. Sharon Guffee makes her own rules indicated in her local rules of court. I filed a proper request to obtain a copy of my hearing from the court's audio-video recording of my case. Sharon Guffee denied it twice without explanation.
Natasha, 15 seconds. Please.
The only way I was able to finally obtain a copy was through the approval of another judge that replaced Judge Guffey's following her recusal. After viewing the video, it was clear why Judge Guffee didn't want anyone to see it. She gives opposing counsel advice, suggesting to him that he should file against me. I'm not surprised by her actions, since she was just giving her advice to her longtime buddy, her former co-worker, to the man who attended her swearing-in ceremony, her personal and familiar friend, Dana McClendon III. Judge Guffee should have disclosed her personal and close relationship with Mr. McClendon prior to my hearing. I have video, audio, and documented evidence of my allegations. You are welcome to review it online at www.judgesharonguffee.com. If Williamson County, Tennessee wishes to have a reputation of providing its citizens with justice, a safe family environment, and a juvenile court which is more interested in rehabilitation than incarceration of our youth, then I urge you to remove Judge Sharon Guffee from the bench. My story is only one of many that occurred at separate times with separate lawyers and separate circumstances. If you investigate all the stories, you would undoubtedly find that there's a consistent pattern, and that pattern shows her consistent ill behaviors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Nave.
My name is Tom Nave, and thank you for hearing me out. I've been a long-time resident
state
here.
your address for the
Oh,
record, please.
6171 Christmas Drive, Nolensville, Tennessee. I've been a long-time resident of Williamson County for most of my life. Was born and raised in Oak Hill. I've been a developer, businessman. I now work for the TDOT, the Commissioner, John Shore. And I'm here with kind of a different circumstances than what these other people are here. First of all, I'm here kind of represent my daughter who is under the weather tonight. And what took place affected me personally and the entire family. My daughter, her two sons had come from a visit, and they told her some things. So my daughter reported these things to DCS under the recommendation of a counselor, and then myself. Look, you got to report these things. So she called up DCS and reported an incident that had taken place. DCS, in turn, called her in for an interview, and then subsequently, they, just for really no reason at all, said that she couldn't, be with her children, that there was an investigation that was going on, and so on a Thursday, they allowed me to take the children, and I went home. DCS and the foster care people followed me home. I went through the requirements, all the paperwork, the federal check to become a foster kinship parent as their grandfather. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we took the boys to the lake. Monday, we took them to a doctor, to the county health clinic, which was a requirement. Monday night, the police and DCS show up at my house and wanted to take the kids. I mean, no clue what's going on. Why? And I said, let me call DCS. This was at 8:30 at night. My daughter and my wife was inside the DCS building. They'd called them over there. And basically locked them up, sent the sheriff office, 2 officers in DCS, to my house to take the children. I called DCS to the main director up there at 8:30, who was still there with my wife and daughter, and asked her why, and she said she did not have to. No, I asked her if she had a court order. She said, no, I do not have to have a court order. There is, I can do what I want to with these children, and I'm scared. I'm scared to death.
15 seconds.
Oh, shoot. Okay, anyway, what ended up happening, they took the kids, and I have 4 major complaints. First of all, the complaints made against my daughter, there was no complaints, okay, first of all. No cause for my daughter. The complaint was that my daughter would not sign a piece of paper saying that she would give the kids, to turn the kids over to the state with no cause. She was just going to give, my daughter refused that. They said that by her refusing to give them to the state, she was neglecting the kids. They took the kids at that point in time, and that's when they gave them to me. Then that Monday, they took the kids. They came with police officers, DCS, and then what really made it mad, when there was a hearing on Tuesday, DCS attorney told the judge that if they were to continue with me as the foster kinship parent and not put them in a foster home, that at that point in time, they would lose money. This is the attorney telling Judge Guffee this. And Judge Guffee agreed with this attorney that the money, so they used the money, they brought the money into it, the more money they would get by not giving to me. The number one rule of DCS is to put a child with kinship with their grandparents, aunts, uncle. DCS, after they took them from me, refused, said there's no way that we will entertain anybody, no matter whether it's the spouses, relatives, the husband, or, anybody. Why? Nobody. They're our kids, and we're going to take them, and we're going to do. And they took them all summer long.
Time's up.
I have a ton more to say.
Next, we have Beverly Van Bennison.
I get extra time if you can't say.
That's Beverly Van Benthuizen.
Okay.
It's at 3022 Sakari Circle in Spring Hill.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Beverly Van Benthuizen, and I'm the mother of 2 beautiful children that both have special needs. My son is 11 years old and has autism. My daughter is 5 and has apraxia, which means she cannot talk. The first time we were in Judge Guffey's court, I was awarded custody of the children. Less than 2 months later, with no warning, no trial, no hearing, 2 policemen and 2 caseworkers showed up at my door, and the caseworker, Brittany Benefield, waved a piece of paper saying the judge signed it. No reason why the kids were being taken was ever given. Then my children were immediately thrown into foster care that day, which was already set up for them. This was a planned attack. Since that day, I have had many rights taken away from me in Judge Guffey's court. My First Amendment rights, my Fourth Amendment rights, my parental rights, my visitation rights, my HIPAA rights, and my kids' disability rights have been grossly violated in this court. I have officially reported Judge Guffee and others in her court to the Office of Civil Rights. I am currently in the process of retaining a civil rights attorney to pursue this further. That doesn't even begin to mention the criminal charges. In Judge Guffey's court, there's a rampant and destructive wave of perjury, fraud, bias, and falsification of records. I currently have this under investigation, and charges will be filed soon. That does not even begin to mention the bailiffs. Yes, I said bailiffs, who rotate in and out of the courtrooms every 30 minutes. In doing this, they talk openly about these cases and open about these cases that they are hearing and their ignorant opinions to the mix. While witnesses are sitting there waiting to testify, they joke around about who's guilty and who's not. This is called prejudicing a witness. Influencing a witness in a just court should be a mistrial. This was actually documented in my case by my witness on the stand who testified at Judge Guffee, what the bailiffs were doing out in the hall. Judge Guffee wrote something down on her notepad, but nothing was done. Since then, I have been in the courtroom 2 other times, and apparently nothing is going to be done because the bailiffs were still openly talking about all the cases. If Judge Guffee cannot handle the employees in her court, then maybe she should be replaced. I still can't understand why my children were removed from their home. It was definitely not for their benefit. There's nothing in Child Protective Services is there to protect my kids. My kids never knew abuse or mental torture until they entered the system. I had no charges against me, and I still do not. And the house has been deemed safe by the system. But yet they ripped these 2 special needs kids away from a safe and loving environment of their mother. But if they were not put into the system, the caseworkers couldn't get their bonuses. The system is selfish. It's all about the money, not the kids. It is a pay-to-play system, and I also have that under investigation. Not one bit of effort has been exerted to unify my family. Instead, I have been threatened, and so has my son. I have been told your bond with your son is too strong and needs to be broken. Then I said, like hell. Then that person moved closer to me and said, look, if you don't do everything that the DCS tells you to do, you will never see your kids again. Who would say something like this to a mother? But that person didn't realize that the person that's standing next to me was not DCS, but my witness that heard the whole threat. The same person later threatened my son. He wanted to put my son in a mental institution because he couldn't handle my son's meltdowns. When confronted, this person denied everything, but I trust my son. 1, because if you know autistic kids, it's very hard for them to lie. And 2, he threatened an adult, me, so why would he not threaten a child? This system is grossly broken. My kids have enough to deal with having their special needs, but when a heartless system can rip kids like this out of their home and not care about the trauma it causes, then this system needs to be revised or better yet replaced. Also, I would like to mention that I have requested copies of my transcripts multiple times and have not received them. I tried multiple times to record sessions and have been heavily reprimanded. I have a right to my transcripts. I feel that this court withholds them so their corruption can be contained. Again, I am not an isolated incident. What Judge Guffey's court does not understand is that I'm an American citizen born and raised. And in America, we have the Constitution to protect our rights. Her courtroom is lawless and resembles the witch trials of the 1800s, where they can make up whatever they want about you, whether it's true or not, and convict you for it. This is not Salem. So, commissioners, I ask you, as the rulers of this county, how do you want your county to be seen? This is the 17th wealthiest county in the country. Do you want this to be the next Salem of the United States?
Beverly, 15 seconds.
My kids were my full-time job, but since Judge Guffee took them away, exposing the corruption of the system is my new job. The day they came to the door and turned my life upside down is the day an advocate was born. And looking at the other parents here tonight, I can see the same is true with them. All I can say is we are not isolated incidences. And the ones here tonight are just the tip of the iceberg. But I can tell you that we, the people, are going to loudly and fiercely exercise our First Amendment rights to shine light on this devastating corruption for the love of our kids. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Roy Matlock.
All right. As we know, right now, judges can be corrupt. There's a lot of it going on. If you watch Nashville right now, yes,
Roy, if you'll state your address.
it's
please.
111 Ackland Park Drive. I'm in Nashville now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we know that judges can be corrupt. I mean, we're watching Nashville right now. Casey Moreland steals money from the drug court. He steals money, You know, he trades sex for sentencing and things like that. So it's not hard to really put in perspective that it's possible that judges are corrupt. In the case with this lady, Guffee, I got a good taste of it. I lived in Brentwood at the time, and my boys got into the juvenile system. I have triplet, 2 boys and a girl. So the boys got in the system, and they got removed from Brentwood High School. And once that happened, I got my first taste when I walked into the courtroom, and I couldn't speak about anything. And she starts dictating everything that's going to happen. Doesn't talk to me at all about, you know, what might be a good solution to helping the kids. Well, as it began, it started like that. And then my ex-wife and I, we had an issue about the way we thought the boys should be handled. And we go to court trying to settle that, and the next thing you know, we walk out of court and they're in DCS custody. Phil Plant is in the back in the judge's chambers. He comes walking out of the judge's chambers, tells me that he's going to mediate all this between DCS and all this kind of stuff. Well, I find out later that Phil Plant's not even licensed, but he's in the back of the courtroom with the judge. So it starts out like that. Then from there, my boys get moved from school to school because now they are no longer with us. And then they end up in Greenville in a boys' home. All right. The Greenville boys' home, very clearly to me, was so many seats you got to fill, so let's send them away. This is kids that had an alcohol on campus at Brentwood Brentwood High School inside of their car. And this is how this thing began. Before I know it, I'm spending $100,000 in legal fees trying to get my kids out of this. I went through 3 or 4 attorneys here in Franklin because every time I told them I wanted to go after this judge, they quit. All right, and I can give you, I've got names of the different attorneys. So finally, I met Connie Reguli, and we continued on with it. And I finally got him out of this. I talked to my son. He's here. And I told him today, I said, do you want to come up and talk? He says, Dad, I can't talk. He said, it's just going to bring back bad memories, but I want to be here because I don't want to be, at least I can be maybe a part of helping somebody into the future. Here's what I look at. It needs to be an investigation on this judge, not just on what she's done. She makes decisions. She could have easily just said, go with the dad. There was no reason for her not to have done that. But instead, she stuck him into all this kind of stuff. There needs to be an investigation. She's getting paid off, is what I believe. If I were betting, she's getting paid off by the halfway houses. She's getting paid off by the counselors. She's getting paid off by the drug. She's getting money because no one would operate the way she operates unless there was some reason to do it. Because if the goal is in juvenile court is to rehabilitate and not punish, she's not doing that. What she's doing is she's going in there and pushing stuff that made no sense. This is 2 kids that got ripped out. I've been in Nashville and Brentwood my whole life. There was nothing at all that would have been a reason. They couldn't have just said, look, let them go over there, but she refused to do that. So y'all need to remove them. And what I think is going to happen, if you don't remove her, you're going to get civil cases against you, left and right. I didn't come up here with that in mind, but I'm telling you, this whole Williamson County courthouse is going to be what's going on in Nashville right now. It's going to be one big problem, and that lady needs to go. So that's all I have to say on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Harris.
Would you mind if Denise Andrews, she's the last one on the list because she was the parents of the same children. If you
Okay.
And then Elizabeth Harris.
Hi, my name's Denise Andrews. I'm at 2104 Old Clarksville Pike, Ashland City. I'm the ex-wife of Roy, who just spoke, and I just wanted to talk about the decision that Judge Guffee made to put our sons in DCS custody and what impact that has had on our whole family for years on end. We did have a disagreement. There had been the boys had gotten in a little trouble, and we had some disagreement about kind of what decisions should be made. So we came before Judge Guffee with, the understanding that she had their best interest at heart. And, I believed that at the time until I walked out of there and, in a few minutes period, they got put in DCS custody. And it wasn't a matter of, you all don't agree, let's go to a mediator, let's, do, do other avenues. It was immediately take them out of the homes, either home where they hadn't had any, both parents were good parents. And that was kind of the first, first wave. And from there, through being taken out of schools, disheveled, and, being in Greenville, where, my son will not hardly talk about it. But there was definitely some, physical and verbal abuse that went on there, and we tried to let that be known. But nothing, nothing changed. He still had to stay there and wait it out. I think the words were the same as one of the other ladies that spoke, where Judge Guffee said, if you don't know how to parent together, then I'll make the decisions for you, and they will go to DCS. I just feel like rather than offering a solution, that is undermining the power of the parents. And, I know that people have conflicts and disagreements, but that's what mediators and other people are there for. I don't think the system is designed to send, DCS has a place, obviously, but I don't think it's designed to do what is happening in the courtroom now. It's not effective. It didn't work for my sons. It caused them a lot of trauma. And to the point where when this all started transpiring, your family sort of gets a name, and we did, and to the point where Brentwood police would drive by our house numerous times a day for no reason at all. Drive by, stop, pause, park, and it was to the point that I ended up moving out of Brentwood because I just couldn't take Williamson County anymore.
Denise, 15 seconds.
Okay, and so I just feel like that there have got to be other options where these kids that get in a little bit of trouble have a way to not dig themselves in a hole, and where they can actually get some help and guidance. And I just don't, I think Judge Guffee really undermined, all the parents here today. I know she did in our family. So thank you.
All right, next we have Elizabeth Harris.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Harris, 204 Corey Drive. My name is Elizabeth Harris. In the Williamson County Juvenile Court System, I am also known as the mother of J.H., the plaintiff in a pending civil rights lawsuit. I am here today not to talk about the civil rights lawsuit pending against Williamson County, but about the devastating effect of the juvenile court system and the integral role played by Judge Sharon Guffee. It is my belief and opinion that my son is a victim of assault directly related to the mismanagement of the Williamson County Juvenile Court System by Judge Guffee. In 2013, my son was suffering from an autoimmune disorder that manifested in a variety of neuropsychiatric symptoms. There is no dispute that his behavior was impulsive, disorderly, and defiant, but he was not a criminal. Over the prior 2 years, I had sought desperately as a parent to find the source of his episodic apparent behavior. I sought medical and mental health relief, but continued to struggle with a real answer. Finally, I believed that as a responsible parent, I should engage the juvenile court system. I was told that juvenile court was rehabilitative, and I believed that they would be able to engage resources that were otherwise unavailable to my family. This was the biggest mistake of my life. My son's experience in the detention center was abusive, and the next 6 months of our lives would be a living hell. Instead of facilitating my attempts to admit my son into a brain rehabilitation center in Illinois, Judge Guffee put a tether on me, ordering that I had to get him admitted into the facility on that very day she released him, or I would go to jail. An impossible task, since the facility in Carbondale was 3 hours away. Nevertheless, I tried. If I did not make an attempt to get medical treatment, I felt that I was sentencing my son to solitary confinement, because this had been Judge Guffey's remedy of choice. By October 2013, my son had already spent 8 days there in the Williamson County Detention Center in solitary. Over the prior 3 months, I had seen him deteriorate even more, and yet I was unable to get him admitted to the medical facility. When I told my son that he had to be returned to detention, he believed that he would again be incarcerated in solitary confinement. I could see the fear in his face and hear the terror in his voice, and he's begged me not to take him back. So I kept him away while I continually worked on admission. On November 14th, Judge Guffee called me and screamed at me that I had to immediately return my son to jail, even after I tried to explain that we were still working on the admission. The following day, I returned my 14-year-old son to the Williamson County Juvenile Detention Center. I had no idea how bad it would get. Within 6 days, Judge Guffee managed to have me arrested, which was later dismissed, and then she restricted my contact with my medically fragile child to 30 minutes a week. Also, since my son had been in homebound through the Board of Education, he was now cut off from all schooling. My son was then accused of assaulting and threatening other boys in the detention center. Instead of giving him a hearing, they isolated him in a concrete cell that, as he described, was not larger than our bathroom. He has since described this experience as the abject loneliness as the darkest time in his life. Much of what occurred in juvenile detention I am forbidden to tell you, because Judge Guffee and her staff shut down all contact with my son, left him in solitary confinement, and did not get him mental health treatment or trauma intervention. Judge Guffey's efforts to undermine me did not stop. She denied me requests to release him for his follow-up appointment with his neurologist. Before my son was released from detention, the court recommended that he be placed in Hermitage Hall, a facility for sex offenders. And they filed a petition against me claiming I was guilty of medical neglect. When I refused to agree with the allegations in the petition, they threatened to make the charges against me worse. And they did. When I brought my son's psychiatrist to court on January the 6th to again try to explain his complex medical issue, they served me with a petition accusing me of Munchausen's by proxy, a mental health disorder of parents who manufacture diagnoses of their children. And Judge Guffee refused to allow the psychiatrist to testify. The GAL convinced Judge Guffee on January 6th that I should be restrained from talking to any of my son's medical providers and added the proviso that I could not say a bad word about the GAL without her permission. My son was in a living nightmare. He was trying to recover from a neurological disorder, an assault that had taken place in the detention center while he was there, and losing his mother, the one who had provided his care. What has been the damage to my son? In May of 2015, you may recall that a young man sped through downtown Franklin and crashed into a storefront. That was him. My son had left the house one night and was triggered at the sight of the police when this occurred. I am lucky he is alive. As I said,
15 seconds.
As I said at the beginning, I blame Judge Guffee and her mismanagement of the detention center. Had Judge Guffee allowed me the proper time to admit my son for medical treatment, the perpetrator would not have had the opportunity to assault him. Had Judge Guffee properly trained her staff in the management of the facility, my son would not have been placed in solitary confinement. Had Judge Guffee disclosed the personal communication she had with the GAL, my attorney would have been able to assault her pleadings before they caused damage. I believe as commissioners, you have an obligation to this community and the families that reside here to ensure the fair treatment of juveniles and their families in times of crisis. I am asking that the commission vote to remove Judge Guffee from the payroll of this county and find a judge who will make this a better place to live.
Next, we have Alison Wolf.
Hello, my name is Alison Wolf, 4047 Ostella Road. It's with a broken heart I come to you to tell you about the destruction of children and families occurring in the Williamson County Juvenile Court of Sharon Guffee. Imagine getting the phone call to inform you that your beautiful 18-year-old son has just been arrested and charged with aggravated armed robbery. I got that call last week. And knowing it was a result of our abusive and broken juvenile court denying my right to parent and get him help years ago. My family was not perfect, but I would say we were quite blessed. We had a beautiful home in Cottonwood. I was running a busy, successful business in downtown Franklin. My husband worked at the medical center, and my 2 boys were active and busy. But most important, we had each other and we had a loving home. When my oldest son, Kirk, reached 14, he did what many teenagers do. He was defiant, he pushed boundaries, he was disrespectful, he dabbled with marijuana and alcohol, but he was not a criminal. He was also recovering from a series of extremely painful surgeries and illnesses as the result of 2 rare congenital diseases. One procedure left him confined to a wheelchair for an entire summer. Over the next year after this, I knew we needed to take a stronger position on his behavior, and after an especially nasty argument between Kirk and his loving father, and on the advice of local law enforcement, my husband and I filed an unruly petition. Worst mistake of our life. Franklin police took Kirk to juvenile, and we were told to come to court the next morning. We believed that this approach would end with Kirk getting some tough love and with juvenile court releasing him to us the next day. We hoped that a taste of dealing with the court would be enough to put him back on track. When we appeared in front of Judge Guffee the next morning, Kirk told her that he did not want to come home. So she held him for nearly 2 weeks and gave him a guardian ad litem, Michelle Lipford. During this stay, Kirk started up with a story of how he was somehow abused and neglected and afraid for his life to go home. Afraid to go home to a house where there were rules. There was never an allegation of abuse, that my husband and I were abusive or had ever hurt our son. Lipford told him that he had a choice, that if he didn't like our rules and he didn't want to live at home, that he had a choice to go into custody and he could age out there and they could get him services. Instead of providing a forum where we could be heard as parents in the situation or speaking to a single person, doctor, psychologist, family member, neighbor that knew our family, Judge Guffee told him, fine, you don't want to go home, I'll put you in foster care. And off Kirk went. At a later hearing, we begged her to let us put him in an inpatient program for behavioral issues and substance abuse in Huntsville that dealt with dual diagnosis children that had serious medical issues as well. We had already arranged for his bed and transportation from that hearing and the $50,000 a month bill that we were happy to pay for him instead of having him stay in foster care, which we didn't understand why he was there anyway. We even provided Judge Guffee with a psychological evaluation that clearly showed our child was in trouble. In fact, she was holding it in her right hand, I'll never forget it, when she told us that this desire to get our son help at our own expense was overkill. That's what Sharon Guffee said to my face, a panicked mother trying to get her wayward boy treatment. Overkill. Lady, you are over the top, wanting to put him in an inpatient facility. Let me share with you, let's see, my husband and I were ordered to pay $1,200 a month to the state, and we were provided only limited contact with Kirk. Let me share with you what our $1,200 a month got Kirk. Kirk was placed in a foster home in a trailer park in Laverne, where there were at least 3 other teenage boys and 2 unemployed foster parents. I do not know all that happened to him there, but I know he was sexually assaulted and beaten so badly he needed ER treatment, a full scan of his skull and every piece of his already fragile spine. He committed a robbery with his foster peers. He had sex for the first time. He became a heavy smoker and a daily drug user in this environment. It took us almost a year, $40,000 in attorney's fees, and the wisdom of another court to pull Kirk out of foster care and send him home, quote, to his good parents. It was too late. It cost my family everything. Kirk was never able to readjust, having lived in that environment. He was angry and volatile, and there was a sense that no rules or expectations applied to him. He became...
Alice, 15 seconds.
Yes, sir. He became afraid of no consequences. Just before turning 18, Kirk dropped out of high school, 6 months shy of graduation, and started using drugs again. He started hanging out in bad parts of town where he now felt most at home. The devastation started by Judge Guffee was complete. I lost my family. My husband and I divorced. I closed my business. I left the county. My little boy lost his intact family, his only sibling. Here are some photos of my son, who is bright and brave and funny, honor student, saxophonist, speaks French. He is now likely going to spend the next 15 years in prison. He's right over here at your jail. As leaders in this community, I ask you to hold your public servants accountable. Judge Guffee operates a secret court with unchecked abuse of power. Sharon Guffee denied us the constitutional right to parent Kirk and to put him in a world-class treatment facility. She chose to put him in the ghetto, where he learned horrible things while we paid for it as his parents. You have the responsibility to stop these abuses. This is the kind of system that creates angry young men, school shooters. You must use your control over the purse strings of this community to stop Sharon Guffey's destruction of our youth and our entire families. Thank you.
Thank you.
This on? You hear me?
Yeah.
This is not for Dr. Looney. I'd just like to ask Counselor Mosley a simple question. I think I know the answer, but I want to get it on the record. Does this commission have an oversight role for our juvenile court system?
If your question is, do you have the power to remove a juvenile judge, the answer is no.
Do we even have an oversight role in the structure of the court system in this county?
You have some funding of administration.
Right,
but
budgetary
no,
authority.
you do not have a general oversight role of the juvenile.
So the oversight role really lies at the state level, does it not, sir?
Absolutely.
I just want that on the record, because those were some gut-wrenching stories. Thank you. Sorry, Mike.
Commissioner Smith?
I'll wait until Dr. Looney is finished.
Okay.
It's not for him.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Looney? I see none. Thank you, Mike. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Looney, I'm not pushing my button.
It's okay, I needed more steps.
I just want to thank you, for the safety. Can y'all hear me? It's never really working, sorry. Thank you for the safety orientation that you had, and I have a high school senior. And my question is, I'm kind of hearing from different teachers with different ideas and things to bring forward, and they're sometimes sharing them with us. What is the best appropriate way for us to share those ideas? Is it through the school board representative, to you directly? A lot of people are really talking about safety ideas that they're hearing about from other places.
Yes, ma'am.
Like film over windows where kids are exposed, where you can see into cafeterias. And there's a cheap film that you can see out and let sun in, but you can't look in on children. So how would they do
Thank you for your question, first and foremost. So we, hopefully, of course, communication is always a miracle. We have a communication process in place for our employees to give us feedback. But I welcome your direct call and communication on any issue or any parent's input on safety. As the commission probably very well knows, we have a lot of additional safety measures in place that the public is not aware of. Thanks to, honestly, your leadership and the board's insistence and the partnership that we have specifically with EMA and the Sheriff's Department, I'd be glad to talk to you privately about some of those items that are not for public consumption. We very specifically, strategically do not share the contents of our safety plans because we fervently believe that if we were to share the contents of our safety plans, it would create a risk for our students and our employees. But I will say we are deeply committed and stand in strong partnership with all the appropriate agencies to provide as safe a learning environment and work environment as we possibly can.
Thanks again for your leadership.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions for Dr. Looney? I see none. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Guffee has asked me if it would be appropriate for her to speak to this commission during this time of reporting by committees, and I would ask the chair to recognize Judge Guffee.
Okay. Judge Guffee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I came in late, but I will tell you, first of all, that I am proud to live in a country that has the First Amendment. And I want you to know that I've been in a meeting for the last 2 hours with our foster parents at our enrichment center. And we're trying to recruit more foster parents. And I want you to know how enlightening that meeting was. We have some very dedicated people here in our county that are taking care of our children. And I also want you to know, since we have several resolutions before you tonight, that I am so incredibly proud of my staff and the work that they're doing. And I want you also to know that if you ever have any concerns about what we do in juvenile court or what is being done, that my door is open, and I am happy to talk to each and every one of you at any time, because there are always many sides to the stories that we hear in juvenile court, and they are sad, and they are tragic. And we appreciate all of your consideration for our department.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Ford?